It's betting, Jim, but not as we know it.
How dare you? Are you just talking to yourself?
Two, one, six.
It is 15 minutes past 3 p.m. on Wednesday, the 1st of May, 2024. And you are listening to the BashCast. Coming up in this afternoon's BashCast, we trial a first ever simulcast, videocast, podcast, BashCast, chatcast. I am slamming hot after winter training, and so we are sharing this value with you on video for the first time. Tom goes to Disneyland, finds out that it has the lowest ROI in the world ever out of anything. My gambling history, where I started, how I met some of my syndicates, where Duncan started, why he started bookie bashing in my kitchen, and whether we can speak from a position of authority. SmartBash 2024 tickets are selling fast. We have some big names that will be announced soon, big panels and bigger discussions planned at the UK's premier punter focused networking event. Udinese versus Bologna, an example of when huge equity in a game with big value bets doesn't equate to overall profit loss picture. Betting isn't for everyone, why you shouldn't tell anyone you're successful at punting on sports. And from across the pond, gambling stories from the NFL and MLB that will make your eyes water. All of that and more coming up in the BashCast this afternoon. Okay, we're on. Right, Monday morning BashCast. This is not in the right place. Let's put this down here. Monday morning BashCast is unusual. Normally do the BashCast on a Thursday afternoon, sometimes a Thursday evening, Friday afternoon, Friday evening. It's Monday morning. Why are we doing the BashCast on Monday morning? I'll tell you why. Technology problems that are doing my head in. So people listening to the BashCast just now aren't going to notice anything different. But you guys, and I'm pointing at you, are going to notice something different. What do you notice different? The fact that you can see me whilst you're recording this, which is new. It's a new thing. This is an idea by Vivi, a very nice lady from Brazil who also happens to be the marketing manager for bookie bashing. Oh, bookie bashing, you shouldn't have a marketing manager. You don't want too many people to know. Shut up, right? This is how it works. People join, they lose accounts, some people go on a losing run. There is a number, which I know and I'm not going to share, which is the average lifespan for a bookie bashing member. So people leave. So we're not just going to shut the door and not let people in, because then we only have decay, we have no one coming in, and we can't pay our bills, right? On what is essentially a pretty thinly break-even business. So shut up about having a marketing manager. We need one. And she does a great job. And she said, and I'm not going to do a Brazilian accent because I can't do one. And my Portuguese isn't great either. But she said the future is video podcasts. Now, here's the thing. If it's like Joe Rogan and Tucker Carlson or the trigonometry guys, I kind of like watching them, but this is just me. So I don't know if this is the future or not, but I'm giving it a go. Here's the other thing. I have to kind of use two devices. So people listening are being recorded over there, but you guys are listening through this wireless microphone thing here, and everything's got to work at the same. I can't tell you how much of a nightmare it is. It's going to be charged. Things are going to happen. Like 2 weeks ago I tried and it was just a failure. Last week I tried and that was a failure as well. Here's attempt number 3. We're going to give it a go. Where have I been since the last BashCast? Trying to bloody get this. By the way, it's nobody's fault. I'm a technological idiot is is the problem here. I'm okay at maths. I'm not so good at remembering to charge wireless microphone things. I have been over to the happiest place on earth, Disneyland. First time I've been there, and the last, by the way. However, at least it started okay. So that week that I went to Disneyland, it was a bit of a chaotic week. And sometimes one of the things I have on golf is I try not to miss the outright betting. So I've got various avenues that I'll hit. There is outright winner. There is each way, which I generally can only get on in shops via runners. There is DraftKings lineups, sometimes first round leader, various different edges that come into play at majors, but less so on weeks like this when it was the Porsche Singapore Classic in the DP World Tour and the Valspar Championship in the PGA, right? So I didn't have a lot of time that week, and I don't think my runner got on any each way bets. I didn't do any DraftKings, but it takes like 3 minutes. Part of the appeal of the outright betting is that you can just jump on the exchange and quickly fire from the tracker, or some people copy the options that are put up on the site or weekly golf value, which all come from the tracker, and using the tracker is a better option. But I had no time, and so I just did the cheesy thing I tell people not to do, and I copied that. It wasn't even me that did it, it was BB team. And one of those guys on the DP World Tour was Paul Casey, and Paul Casey was really my only shot going into the Sunday, and I got up at 6 a.m. to watch it, and I think something like the 14th hole, 15th hole, he put it in the water, and that was the end of his chances. He wasn't going to win. He was too many shots behind with not enough holes to go. On that subject, I played my shield recently. So I have a golf shield that I play with 3 old buddies. One plays off scratch, one plays off 8, one plays off 12. I play off a lot higher than that. But to my advantage, if I start going net par, that's the equivalent of the scratch guy needing to go eagle. He can't score. So there is some advantage to being the high handicapper there. There's a par. Is that in Castle Combe, I think it's called? Manor House or Manor Hotel golf course. It was pretty sweet. It was nice. I'd never heard of this village before down in Wiltshire, but lots of tourists. Apparently they film the TV shows there. Second hole, technically it was the 20th hole because this is day 2. Par 3, 165 yards. Got my club out. All the way downhill. It landed within about 2 feet of the hole. 2 feet of the hole. And we were all within about 10 feet of the hole. It was the most incredible cluster of shots from the tee that you've seen in your entire life from, you know, amateur golfers, other than the scratch guy who does play competitions, but the rest of us don't. I walked off with a 4. I didn't even get my par, let alone my birdie. I mean, I had a 2-foot birdie putt and a 3-putter on the green, and that's why I will never, ever, ever, ever be a competitive golfer. I hate the sport. I love the sport. I hate the sport. So I'm watching Casey go in the water, and that's the end of my DP World Tour, but it's kind of the end of my evening as well, because the Valspar Championship is later that day. However, I'm not on anyone really in contention in that championship. So we all headed off over to France. And then I am looking at the bookie bashing Slack, where BB team and Duncan, and Lee and myself and the rest of the staff chat with each other. Some great chat some days. And one of them saying, finally got one, because it had been a while. We rotate who does weekly golf. It had been a while since it was his turn and he had a winner. I was like, no, you haven't, because I copied it this week and I wasn't on anyone. I mean, I was on Casey, but I wasn't on anyone. And then I had a look and I noticed I'd made a mistake. And that mistake was there are 2 Svenssons. There's a Jesper Svensson on the DP World Tour, and there's an Adam Svensson on the PGA. And I had gone through all of my players and then starred them on the various leaderboards. And I'd favorited Adam Svensson so I could follow him. But he wasn't a value bet. He wasn't on the list of the weekly golf value that week, which made me think, have I actually bet on Adam Svensson, or have I bet on Jesper Svensson and I didn't know? Because Jesper Svensson shot 67-63 in round 3 and 4, got into a tiebreak with Avi Barnrat, and as long-term golf followers of the weekly golf value service will know, we can't lose tie breaks. It's actually a mathematical model that we've got in place that ensures that if one of our guys goes in to a tie break, we won't lose. I'm not telling anyone how we do it, but the last time I looked, we were like 11 for 12. I think we're now like 14 for 15 or something like that. But yeah, I mean, no one's having that secret. So yeah, I mean, Jesper Svensson's won the DP World Tour, and Adam Svensson wasn't going to win the Valspar Championship, but I was pretty convinced I was on Adam Svensson. And so I opened up my exchange, and it had a lot more money in it than I was expecting. And that's a great way to start a holiday, especially a holiday to the happiest place on earth, Disneyland. Have you ever been? That would test the patience of a saint, that place. Look, no one could affect the fact that it was a downpour, it was just raining all day. That happens. We're Brits, we're used to that. It's not going to ruin our day, is it? What is going to ruin my day, with 2 adults and 2 kids under the age of 8, are 2-hour queues. €430 to go in, and then 2-hour queues. You would think that if that's the case, there are not enough rides or whatever. 1.5, 2-hour queues in the rain. But the worst thing is that you can pay on an app to skip the queue and go to the front if you have enough money, and it's not cheap. It's like €80 for a family of 4 for one ride. So, I mean, I don't know if Disney was a huge advocate of socialism. I think he might have been an advocate of it just being a meritocracy wonderland where those families that can just about afford to sneak themselves in, saving for months, have to get in there and then queue for 2 hours. And incidentally, if you're there for 10 hours, that's 5 hours of queuing for 5 rides that last a minute or 2 each, or maybe 3 or 4 minutes each, but whatever. As you watch the people that can afford more than you through whatever means, whether they've saved, got into debt, inheritance, but whatever it is, those people that have more money go to the front of the queue. And we did go to the front of the queue, and I hated it. And then you look for toys for the kids, and the cheapest plastic tat is €25, and €50 buys you like a cuddly, fluffy toy, which I got for Sasha, and I was just like, oh my God. And then dinner down at the Pirates of the Caribbean restaurant, we worked out was going to be about €500 for a family of 4. Like a glass of wine in the Hotel du Paris in Monte Carlo is €21. A glass of wine at the Pirates of Caribbean restaurant in Disneyland is €25. It's 25% more expensive in Disneyland than it is in the Hotel du Paris, one of the most exclusive hotels in the entire world in Monte Carlo. So we didn't do that. We got some crisps and a baguette on the way out, whilst we had hungry children. And there was face painting there, and I went to a music festival in Worcestershire last year, and I was sort of decrying the fact that the face painting for kids had gone up from £5 the year before to £7 this year, which seemed like a lot of money considering it's a 16-year-old kid doing it for 10, 15 minutes. You know, that could be £28 an hour, 56 grand a year. It's not a bad gig if you can get it, is it? You know? Painting kids' faces. I mean, I know you're not going to fill your 40-hour week, 52 weeks of the year doing that, but you get my point. Anyway, Disneyland, €25 for one child's face being painted. So €50 for the 2 kids. It's almost like they're just doing their best to extract as much money from you as physically possible at every angle, for a coffee, for kids' toys, for face painting, for queue jumping, for just everything. And that just takes the magic away from me a little bit. But the kids loved it. And then we went down snowboarding, which comparatively, snowboarding in the Alps is significantly cheaper, or feels cheaper, than just visiting Disneyland, and for me, lots more fun. Ask the kids, they said Disneyland was the fun thing. What do they know? Ask them in 20 years' time what they remember. Maybe they'll still say Disneyland. It did rain though. Hopefully that ruins their memories, because I don't want to go back. Whilst out there was also this interesting thing of this dichotomy between trying to be out in the real world, but also connected to the virtual world as well. And somebody slightly challenged my authority in the world of betting, but obviously using social media, they did it in a way that kind of was like, I wish I hadn't seen it whilst I was out with my family. You know, when I'm with my 8-year-old daughter and my 5-year-old boy, and then you see just something really particularly nasty. And you're like, God, I wish I'd just stayed offline in that. But the underlying point, I think, was, why do you have authority in the gambling world? And it's an interesting point if we strip away the nastiness. Because in the professional world, of which I'm a member in the engineering sector, in the professional world, you can prove your competency and have authority through getting chartered in an institute, or if you're a medical doctor, or so on and so forth. You know, you have to be tested, and then you can prove that you're an authority on whatever it is that you're an authority on. Myself, personally, I am a chartered highways and transportation engineer. Sounds as exciting as it is, through the Institute of Highways and Transportation, because I spent so long getting trained, getting experience, postgraduate studies, on-the-job studies, going around the world, conferences, blah. Right? So I escalated fairly high in that industry before deciding it wasn't for me, moving on to being a professional gambler. The difference between the two professions is that I could prove my authority being a chartered engineer, chartered highways and transportation engineer. How can I prove my authority in the gambling world? You know? Not even showing you my bank account is really authority, because everybody's starting point is different. If I start with £1 million, then what does it prove? If I show you my bank account's got like 500,000 in it, then I'm a losing gambler. And if I start with 50 quid and I've got 500,000 in it, then I'm a winning gambler. And what does that prove? The only thing that really is proof is return on investment. Now, here's an interesting point of a live video podcast. I'd normally edit this out, and this happens every 10-15 minutes outside my window because I'm on junction. But now that I'm recording, you're just going to have to deal with it. And a lot of people have said in the past they've been listening to the BashCast, and then that happens and they look around because they think it's happening to them as they're walking down the road. Don't worry, it's just a dead person being carried away in an ambulance to the hospital. That's just that way, just down there, too close to a hospital. If you're going to do a 2-hour BashCast that's live, don't live close to a hospital. That's my advice. So yeah, I mean, in terms of like how you prove it, it's not that easy. Okay, there's no institute that's going to designate whether you're chartered or not. Although I'm not going to lie, I did go to someone with the idea of that happening and being a more formalized way of approving who's an authority in the gambling world and who isn't. But the reason for this is I thought I would challenge, or at least provide some context to anyone, maybe watching the BashCast and listening to it for the first time, about why I might have some authority. Now, there's 1,000,001 pretty knowledgeable people in the gambling world, and I'm not there. I'm like down here. Now, if average Joe Schmo is here, I'd say I'm somewhere here. You see, you can't see this if you're listening to it, so unlucky. And then like the really clever guys are up here, and there's most of the most profitable gamblers in the world, you're not going to have heard of them. They don't do the podcast and things like that, right? So, yeah, I thought what would be fun, hopefully doesn't come across as narcissistic. I kind of got the idea that giving some context and some background to me and how I got to where I am now might answer the question as to why I might have some authority, a little bit of authority. Might be a little bit of a fun listen for anyone that might aspire to do that. And there's nothing wrong with aspiring to do that. Some people are in some places they don't want to be. They want to be in another place. Totally cool. Grass is sometimes always greener. But I thought it might be an interesting story. And I might interspeed it with some more interesting things. I mean, one of the things I think that some people always want to hear about with professional gambling is that if you ever have a fair whack of money, an unexpected amount of money come in your direction, have you ever splurged it on anything completely useless? To which the answer for me is, yes, I have. So why don't we have some fun and talk about that? So don't take this as narcissistic and skip over to the next section. There are timestamps below if it's not what you want to hear, but here's the reason why. Okay, so on Twitter, this all started with an account saying my favorite betting related accounts are, and he listed like 12 accounts, and there's some really, again, as I was saying, some more knowledgeable people than me on this list. Joseph Buckdahl, like super clever, with his book Monte Carlo and Bust. We had him on the BashCast before. Golf punter Luke Patton. I love his tweets. He's very knowledgeable, has a lot of experience in the betting industry. Some people don't like them. I don't get it. But if you don't like them, just don't read them. But for me, I really enjoy them. Nishikori picks, SBC info, we over specialist. And then I was included in the list. And I was a little bit like, well, that's quite nice, isn't it? And then a name came up from the past, a name that I recognised from my forum a few years ago that was quite disruptive, with us for a couple of weeks, and well, maybe a little bit longer than a couple of weeks, but you know, sometimes when a net negative person is brought into your life, that was this person, hacks the site apparently, and then claims to everybody that everything was wrong, but unlike in the academic or engineering world where you see a problem, you share it and you fix it, rather he just said he'd seen the underlying code, the algorithms, they were complete nonsense, and he wasn't going to explain why, so it wasn't that useful. Left the site in a sort of large argument with myself, with a lot of anger, and then subsequently has spent some time sort of, you know, posting 1-star reviews on the BashCast and just every now and again popping up and sort of little jibe like that, you know. So underneath this post that wasn't mine, that was talking about really good betting accounts that had like, you know, thousands of views, he just said one of these is not like the others, and I instantly knew he was talking about me. The original poster said they're all unique, but I sort of explained that this guy thought that I was a fraud, and he's followed me around for years to remind me this, but I am always open to a real conversation with anyone. I am, because perhaps it will just, I always think with people you fall out with, especially online, that if you were sat in a pub having a beer, would you really fall out as much, or would you be able to settle your differences and say, well, I thought you meant that, and I thought you meant that, and come on, let's hug it out, big man. You know what I mean? Anyway, now bear in mind I received this reply as I was with my 2 kids in a queue. I should have been offline. It's my own fault that I wasn't. But the reply was, fraud, I've never said anything like that. A narcissistic man baby, yes. Fraud, no. This would be the point where I went dun dun dong on the BashCast, but I can't do that because of the video. Because then we'd be out of sync, because I would have to, anyway, it doesn't matter. So, dun, dun, dun. I was in your Discord group years ago and encouraged quite a few others to join in the early days to make it a solid group. I left when it was no longer a place to have quality discussions about the strategies and edges without you pissing your pants and taking everything personally. And the cherry on top was you thinking that all the shit you get from other folk who think that you're an arsehole was somehow attributable to me. I can see you haven't changed. I certainly haven't been following you around for years. Seeing your name pop up on a list like this gave me a nostalgic chuckle. Okay. I mean, they say you should ignore the bad feedback like this, but the context of this was I was out and about with the kids, and the first thing that hit me was narcissistic man baby, and I'm trying not to sort of talk about the personal stuff, but on that, if I'm a little bit aloof and playful, I'm not going to apologise for that. I certainly think it's a preferable way of living life than Derek from accounts. But I'll try to move away from the personal insults here. The crux of the story here is that I do not belong on the list of people that are notable betting related Twitter accounts, or I am not an authority in the betting world. And of course, actually, I think the majority of the people in that list are way more knowledgeable than me. So there is that. But as I've said, this is how I'm going to give some context to perhaps where I've come from. And maybe that's going to be helpful, or maybe it's not. Maybe it's just going to stoke a fire, right? But how did Tom, a.k.a. Basher Tom, a.k.a. the mayor of Value Town, get from someone that would just go and play blackjack age 17 at the casino in Hanley in Stoke-on-Trent until the sun came up, and negative expectation blackjack at that as well? How did I get from there to here today? Right. So if we start in 1995, when I'm loving the feeling of leaving a casino with a little bit of cash in my hand and seeing people driving to work in the morning. I've been up all night, and what have I been doing? Playing negative expectation games. But that sensation that I'd somehow got won over. By the way, I lost more than I won. Of course I did, playing negative expectation games. No counting or anything back in those days. But that sensation, that kind of is there a way to sort of cheat life here? Is there a cheat code to life? I vividly remember that hanging around me back in those days. And those early days, from the casinos in 95 all the way up to 2000, something like that, they were just mainly losing money, going into bookies, losing money, going into casinos, losing money, didn't know what I was doing, loved the gambling, loved the sensation of it, loved the winning, didn't like the losing, wasn't particularly good at it, but that's where we started, right? 2000, 2001, I went around the world. And when I went around the world, I went to Southeast Asia, across Australia, New Zealand, America, and met some really interesting people. It was an opportunity in life when I was 22 years old just to go and meet people that I wasn't necessarily exposed to back in my university base of Birmingham. And I met some fascinating people, including some people that would gamble and move and gamble and move. They were counting cards. They weren't counting cards particularly high stakes, but they were making enough to go around Australia, earning enough money to do that from the casinos, whereas I was bloody fruit picking and just picking up jobs wherever I could, left, right and centre, and working for some charities and things like that. And their life seemed to be a lot more attractive than mine. And I learned the sort of basics, and they sat down because it was long days in a hostel, and went out to visit them in America when I was there and saw them plying their trade, and was introduced to some more people through them, and introduced to blackjack counting and to poker at the same time around about 2001. In fact, it was very much around September 11, 2001. So it was a very weird time to be in America then. I was actually in a plane on that day flying into America, the other side of America, the West Coast, so far away from everything, but we turned around midair. Anyway, that was where the advantage play learning started. I wasn't implementing a lot of it because traveling around the world didn't have that much expendable income, but I was definitely getting more and more fascinated about the fact that I was aware that people were winning. And when I got back to the UK in 2001 and embarked on a 6-7 year postgraduate degree, I funded this by firing up online poker and reading as much as I could. And back in the early days, there were not a lot of people knew about optimal strategy, but you could buy books and read about them. How guess how many people did buy books and read about them? Not many. I mean, this was how I was used to doing things. I an academic, I would study, and so I'd study poker. I would buy Doyle Brunson's Super System 2 with a really good chapter from Daniel Negreanu on Deuce 7 Triple Draw in there, and I realised everyone was playing No Limit Hold'em. It's probably the hardest thing to get good at, so why don't we go and pick one of the other games? Or, actually, where I went to is mixed games, horse, 8-game, because then you don't have to be the best at the table on one game. You can just be moderately good at all games instead of the best, and that may be enough to have an edge. And the next thing I learned was that at 2 o'clock in the morning in the UK, 2 o'clock in the morning in America, it was Sunday morning, 10, 11 a.m. in the UK. So what you could do is wake up early on a Sunday morning or a Saturday morning, and you're picking off the American guys who are a lot more affluent than we are and have more expendable cash, but are also a little bit more weekend joyous than we are because it's their nighttime and it's our morning. So playing ABC against those guys, not particularly clever, definitely profitable. It was sort of table selection. It was like, what are the odds that this table full of Americans at 2 o'clock on a Saturday night over in America aren't going to be at least half cut, some of them, you know? And you know, sometimes they just go all in with junk and you lose, but more often than not, you make the right decision over and over again. And I started to learn about variance, volatility, and bankroll. The problem was, I remember early days, I took a few bad beats, it wiped me out, and I'm thinking, I just need a little bit more money because I know that in the long run, I'm beating these guys. And it taught me to stake a lot lower and to ride the volatility and the variance, and ended up being able to fund a lot of my postgraduate through what was no more of a trick than playing ABC poker in sort of more niche poker cash tables against drunk Americans. It's all it was, but it was my edge at the time. Whilst doing this, there was a forum called 2+2 Poker Forums, but then there were also some smaller ones, and 2+2 Poker Forums was a massive forum. I think back in the time it might be like the 20th largest forum on the internet. And people were encouraged to post hand histories there and say, you know, I raised here, should I have done, should I have checked? And then you learn concepts through there about post-flop aggression and, you know, the amount of times you voluntarily put money into a pot. And you can ask people to critically review hands. You put them up there and people critically review them, or you put ideas there and people critically review them and they'll give them back to you. And there's other resources, Gus Hansen's every single hand played in a tournament. And started getting a lot of good critical feedback, and I enjoyed the sharing of information, and I sort of moved from there into some cash games, some local cash games, made money there, into, you know, tournament play down at the European Poker Tour, $5,000 buy-ins, $10,000 buy-ins, that kind of scale. So things were going well on the poker tables. Now, this is 2005, 2010, and that's when I started doing with sports betting what I did with poker. And there were some online forums. Some of the earlier ones, I forget the name of. The bigger ones around 2010 were R Points, the Gambling Times. R Points was quite amusing because there was a moderator there that allowed anything except he hated swearing. And I think everybody left because the tartan tipster moderator was too difficult for people to converse with. But then there were some private forums that I remember that I came through the bigger forums, was invited to, and these were the interesting ones. They were kind of lock and key private forums, and you had to do that because there was a lot of lurkers around. You didn't want to give information away from free. And there was maybe some of them had a few hundred and some of them had a few dozen and some had less than that. And they were around in 2010, 11, 12, and I found that by posting strategies, equity graphs on various forums, I got myself invited into these where the discussion would continue. If we did a strategy on football or this or that, then how much money would we expect to make looking backwards and forwards, what's variance, what's good luck, what's bad luck, and all of these concepts that came over from chatting on the forums on poker. And that introduced me to some syndications, some syndicates, and I joined these syndicates, and there's various jobs in these syndicates. Some of it's intel, some of it's running, some of it's administration. I mean, anything can happen in them, and did very well across these syndicates. And the syndicates covered a variety of betting. I mean, There was it covered live casino, it covered poker, it covered sports betting, it covered shop betting, it covered online casino, it covered all of that. And if you threw everything into the pot, my net profits leading up to about 2015 were just shy of about £1 million. And that is with the authority that I bring to the table. Now, these syndicates that I was in, because they're smaller places, I mean, they came away from the online forums, especially as WhatsApp got a little bit easier. I think it was Facebook Messenger before WhatsApp, to create groups that people could talk to. And some of them were interesting, some of them ended in a lot of drama, and some of them ended with people stealing money. But there was a lot to learn throughout all of that. And in 2015, one of the syndicates that I had started with some older people that I knew from university, we went out for our annual general meeting, which generally was a once a year excuse to have a piss up together, because we might live in different areas in the country. One guy's from Australia. So we went out in Worcestershire to the Queen's Head on the piss up. We have an agenda, we have notes. Essentially, we're just celebrating our successes and highs and commiserating our lows and last minute equalizers and things like that. And we got back to the house, and Duncan in my kitchen suggested, why don't we just start a forum? We're in different syndicates. We're trying to pull information. A lot of work is getting duplicated. Why don't we just start one? And we just called it the same name that we called ourselves, my old syndicate group of university pals, and that's the Bookie Bashers. That group was 6 people, but it was an unfortunate start for the 6th member, and it became 5 very quickly in just the worst possible way. So let's just call him M. I don't want to say his name publicly, but M was in the group from the beginning. He may have been the least experienced gambler, but part of being in a syndicate is you're able to learn and just take instruction. Like if I say, go do this, and you can trust that the mathematics work and the EV works, then go do it and you should make money in the long run. We made a really quick start, really quick start, making more money than we should have done. Lots, tens of thousands of pounds. And I don't think he could believe his luck. He'd never seen anything like it. He wasn't earning too much at the time. And so he saw the money come in and thought it was going to last forever, and treated his girlfriend to a really expensive holiday over in Russia. And then he came back and the inevitable happened, didn't it? We went on a losing run, but the other 5 of us hadn't spent any of the winnings, and so we could use the previous winnings for the losing run. M had spent the winnings and therefore was now burning his own cash, his own savings, which I understand his bankroll was limited at that time, and it killed him. The losing run killed him, and he couldn't handle it. And I think I remember waking up after another day of losing runs, and that was it for him. He just said he can't take it anymore, and he decided to leave, as is his right, and he settled up with us what was owed, and that was the end of M. And of course, what happened immediately afterwards? Of course it did. He left, and we went on the craziest heater, making money hand over fist. There's nothing you can do about that. It was more of an expectation and variance thing. I should have stepped in and told him not to spend the money, that we were running hot. I take a lot of responsibility for that. There were some learning things to go through. But it happened. We're all grown adults. So if I can just stop here at the beginning of bookie bashing. I kind of thought it might be interesting, having made pretty much £1 million to discuss, have I spent anything interesting or maybe splurged any of that cash? Yes, I have. I mean, I haven't been mega irresponsible, but I did write down a few things thinking that it could be interesting to talk about. I do remember back in, I think, 2012 or 2013, back in the early days, we'd had a particularly successful 2 or 3 months in a row. And I saw a social media post, and I cannot tell you now what platform that would have been. I'm guessing Facebook back in 2013, by the rapper Example. And he'd taken his girlfriend or wife or whoever his partner was at the time to a villa in Bali, and it looked sweet beyond belief, and they were talking about how amazing that was. And so I decided to book that for me and my girlfriend of the time, Jen, were we married? Actually, I think we were just married at that point. And we went over to Bali. By the way, I don't think £1,000 a night sounds outrageous in 2024, but I think it was a lot more outrageous in 2013. And we did the better part of a week in this villa where we had our room, the swimming pool was here, the infinity second swimming pool came off the bottom of the bed and fell down the cliffs, private cinema, team of people making us food in a private kitchen, that kind of thing. It was exorbitantly expensive. It was a lot of fun and certainly not something I would do now. I'm a different person now. Kids change you. I think mostly I'd look at the price of that and think, well, I could go to the Premier Inn and save that money for my daughter and my son in the future. There was a penthouse in Greece that had a massive pool table right in the middle of it, which was out of place but very Greek. And I remember the guy that rented that said, what do you do? And I said I was in sports betting. And he wanted me to meet everybody that he knew that happened to be very high up in the sports betting industries in Greece. And I went to a restaurant and chatted with them. Nothing ever came of those meetings, but it opened those kind of doors. There were cars that we bought outright because I hate the idea of any interest or loan on those. Ridiculous amounts of money spent on meals. The Fat Duck, 3-star Michelin, 2-star Michelin, kind of got addicted to the Michelin star restaurants. And when I sum up how much went on that back in the days, it was fairly ridiculous. And I cringe a little bit when I think about it now because what have I got? Like, it was a lot of experiences, a lot of nice holidays, but then they no longer exist. I have a pretty expensive bright orange designer coat that's now looking the better part of the decade that it is. By the way, I'm just going to have to, and again, because it's live, excuse me for this, nose is getting a bit itchy. There was a robot lawnmower, which is currently out in the garden and is still around. The antenna's broken, but she cuts the grass fine. She's still around, but the rest of it just got pissed up the wall. There were sweets at sporting events. So I think I'm certainly one of those guys. I'm more of an experiences guy than a possessions guy. But now those things are in the past, I don't waste the money as much anymore. Then I'm not so sure about it. I'm not so sure. I'm glad it happened, but it's sort of fizzling into the past. So there was a lot of that stuff. And do you know what, by the way, if you're one of those that think that, oh my God, he's showing off, I'm trying to share a fun story. That's all I'm doing. You know, you turn around to your mate and you say, oh, I had a lovely meal at the Fat Duck, and your mate says, you're just showing off. Well, do you know what? No, I was sharing something with you because I like you as a person. I thought you might be interested in the story. And if you're going to take it as showing off, maybe that's on you and not me. So then we started bookie bashing in my kitchen with £10 a month, and we had some people join. It had to be £10 a month. Being you can't have it free, there needs to be a barrier for entry, otherwise there are too many lurkers and people steal the ideas. And we got a lot of the syndicates and people that we'd known through the door, and edges and strategies would be shared down there. And with that, we just became a little bit more knowledgeable in things like steamers, coupon betting, each way betting, concession betting, which no longer really applies. You can't get away with it these days, but you could a lot more in 2015. And leading from 2015 up to 2017, 18, until we brought on board Lee, who, to be fair, got in touch with us, and he's a whiz at all the IT stuff. Back in the day, we were just posting JPEGs of tables of value, which would go out of date as soon as we were posting them. And now we've got all of the live trackers and the APIs and so on and so forth. So, I mean, also, if you looked at the actual design of the site back in 2015, 2016, 2017, it was so amateur. So things look very different then. But as we got better and we attracted more people and we started charging a fair price and we weren't losing money, which we did for years and years and years, I decided that I was going to end the majority of my syndication because it simply wasn't appropriate anymore. I've been there and I've done that, but I can't expect to be in a group of people and have edges and angles shared when I also head up bookie bashing. Even if I give you my word that I'm not going to share it, it's not really appropriate. I've got the podcast, I've got the site. I'm really essentially selling a data service around edges and angles. Everybody drink. That was a short one, ambulance. And so it's not appropriate. And so my syndication ended towards 2020, the lockdown years and things like that. And now I just have this single, private one every now and again where you can sort of throw some money at some very, very trusted people. But in terms of like joining people that I didn't know, and a lot of times in the syndication, you barely know people's full names. No, that doesn't happen anymore. So am I an authority in betting? I've had a journey. And not a lot of people often tell you your journey of how you got from A to B. And that was a succinct and quick version of it, interspeeded with a bit of fun, I hope, with stuff I've spent money on, which some of it's ridiculous. No, all of it's ridiculous, to tell you the truth. But whether that qualifies me or not is there's no formal place that's going to turn around and say Tom's a qualified professional at gambling. And I'll tell you what, I hate the term professional gambler as much as anyone. I think anyone that learns to use it's possible to win at gambling back in the early days uses the terms professional or semi-professional gambler, but you can tend to roll your eyes at it a little bit, simply because there's no institute that's going to confirm whether you are or not, and there's a lot of charlatans in this industry. Am I one of them? Maybe I am, but that's my story. If you found that entertaining, don't know what you meant to do. Give me a thumbs up, like and subscribe. Vivi, help me. Okay. I am going to break in both here and here now to have a little topic break and run to another room quickly or not. That's the story of Tom. I was going to talk about the SmartBash in this section. By the way, for those watching, do you like the bookie bashing studio? I mean, this office is in my house. It's in a different wing in the house to the rest of the house. So I've got an upstairs there. If you sort of, I don't want to show how messy it is off camera. So there's a downstairs there and another room there. But then, because this is a family house, this is all separated, and that's ideal for, we've got the kids. You don't want to be bugging everybody else whilst maintaining a proper family home. I was going to pick the camera up and just show around a little bit of the office, but I've realised, because I'm doing the audio as well, this microphone is static, and I can't take that around, so you just have to live with it. The other thing is, as I say, this thing here is a light up, what do you call it? I can't think of the word. Cactus, thank you very much. It's got light bulbs in it and batteries that run it. But I can never be bothered to change the batteries, so it's kind of a waste of time. But in the early days, we banned booming on the site because it's indicative of people that are concentrated on short-term wins and gains, and that's not really that healthy and advantage playing value betting. But to allow people to celebrate in a fashion, we settled on the cactus emoji, which is why there's a cactus there. I just wish it would light up. Amazed this plant isn't dead, and there's some more cactuses there. In fact, someone once saw one of the videos and was pretty impressed with the cactuses because they were a big cactus fan. So there you go. And there's the drawing table, if you were interested. So let's talk about the SmartBash. In fact, on that, just got a little notification from Pete from SBC, who says he doesn't want to interrupt the BashCast, but he's he just wants to talk about guests and panel stuff. So look, things are coming on really well in terms of the SmartBash 2024 in association with Matchbook. Super happy to have the Matchbook guys on board. Mostly, if you came last year, it was kind of amateurish how it was thrown, because what do Pete and me know about throwing a networking event? The guys at Matchbook have done this before, and they are really helping us out with their knowledge and experience and insight and stuff like that. In terms of who's going to be there, I think we wanted to have an announcement, but a joint one across the three businesses. So I don't want to do it now because I don't think we've agreed that we're going to release these names yet. Perhaps there's some people that don't necessarily want to be announced. All I can say is that it's the biggest names in the world of advantage play and value betting who are going to be there in person on panels, doing some speaking and just doing some networking as well. And so what do you get for your £99? Somebody did get in touch with me with a comment. What do you get for £100? Answer, £1 change. You get a bit more than that, in all honesty. You get the opportunity to speak to these guys who are the top of the industry, the well-known faces, the very senior traders, the people that are on Sky Sports, the people that are most prominent on social media, and some of the guys that are less well-known but are right at the top of their game. You get the opportunity to hear them talk. We're going to have discussions from them. One of my ideas was some modelling panels. So there are various different panels that are going to be out throughout the day. And if I can figure out how the spreadsheet works that Matchbook have put together, then maybe I could talk about some of them, like a sharp punting panel of experts, a compliance panel, if that is of interest to you. We were going to have a Euro 2024 post-tournament reaction because it's going to be right in the middle of this, and we're going to be at Chelsea Stadium whilst this happens as well. A reality of bookmaking panel, because I think one of the more valuable things that came out from last year's hearing from the bookmakers. It's so easy just to bemoan how badly behaved they are, but sometimes they've got challenges and hurdles that are insurmountable. And really, what would you do if you were in their shoes? I want to tap into some exchange players and some seeders who might want to talk through exactly how and what they're doing on the exchanges, some AI in betting, some betting models, presentations or chats, betting syndicate panel, innovation, closing line panel, market makers, all of this kind of stuff we were going to talk about. Here, my idea was, this may not happen, but I think it'd be quite cool if it did, is if we can talk about the world of maybe modelling in golf and football, two good sports to talk about. Let's say we had two goldfish bowls and we draw ping pongs out of them, table tennis balls. A bit like an FA Cup draw. And maybe it's two hypothetical teams that would never face each other normally, such as Leicester City and the American USA women's international football team. So what would happen if you put those two together in a match? How would you price up the expected goals for each of those teams? Maybe the over 2.5 price in the game. Maybe some other markets like first goal scorer. How would we do it? What would the odds be? And if it was maybe some people that did this up on stage with me curating perhaps, then it might be of interest to some people. Maybe it would, maybe it wouldn't. In fact, let me know. I'm interested. Maybe it's just me that's interested in something like that. Because I think that would give some insight that I could go away and learn some new things that I hadn't been aware of before. And just, we're talking about the sharper end. There's so much nonsense out there from Andy Robson who they really want to hide and muddy the waters on behalf of the bookmakers, that it's not possible to get pretty good at pricing stuff up yourself, when it really is. I mean, everyone knows this in horse racing, especially if you've got some insider info. And horse racing is the outlier sport. I'm talking about sports where there is a lot of data. Could you walk into William Hill and ask if one of the graduate team could price up a match? I doubt you could, because they don't train them up as traders, statisticians. They don't work in the fields of probability. They work in the field of restrictions and identifying how they can maximize their profit short term at the expense of long term, if you ask me. So you'll never hear on Twitter or from bookmakers about the nuances behind how do things get priced up. And by the way, what's the correct way of pricing up a football game? There isn't one. Okay, there's only good ways, maybe better ways, maybe flaws, maybe advantages and maybe disadvantages. There's no right and wrong. This isn't Boolean. It's not black and white. And therefore, it leads itself to being a discussion and not a lecture, right? Same with golf betting. There's no one person in the world that knows how to price up exactly Scotty Scheffler in the next tournament. There are good ways of doing it. There are bad ways of doing it. There are advantages and disadvantages. And again, it leads to a panel. So I thought it'd be fascinating and interesting if we had that conversation on stage. I thought. And I was kind of pushing this agenda. But listen, actually, do me a favour. If you're listening to this and thinking about coming, or even if you're not, Would you be interested in hearing something like that? Or do you think it sounds tediously boring? Do email me at tom@bookiebashing.net with that feedback, because I do fear I'm sometimes out on my own with some of this weirdness. In terms of the discussions, there's a lot of what's going on today. Compliance stuff, bookmaker stuff, shop stuff, punter stuff. I want to have a little bit of like story time. I want people that have made quite a lot, and not Matchbook, Smart Betting Club, or Bookie Bashing, because I certainly don't want this to be a come to our event and listen to us talk. That's cheesy as far as I'm aware. So I'm not talking about us. If anything, I'm hoping that Pete and Jesse and Ronan and myself are curating as opposed to talking. More listening, less talking. That's what I hope anyway, because I think that's what people would expect and would want for buying a ticket to an event like this. Really, we're inviting the professional guys, of which Pete's got a lot of contacts, as do Matchbook, as do ourselves. We're inviting these guys to come and chat. Chat about everything? No, that's not going to happen. Of course it's not, because as we all know, we can erode and risk edges. So you're not going to hear everything. But one thing that we're stipulating is we don't want it recorded. We're going to ask, I mean, look, there's not going to be any bouncers on the door. Or maybe there is, actually. We were discussing about this last time, but look, we're not going to be confiscating mobile phones, but we're going to ask that conversations aren't recorded, speeches aren't recorded, panels aren't recorded. We're not going to be inviting media there to be pushing these things, because I think a lot of conversations in our domain don't happen if we know that they are freely reproducible. It's much better to tell people things like we used to back in the day, before everything got recorded. Everything doesn't have to be recorded. You use these if you want to learn. You don't use these. So, hopefully by sort of encouraging less recording of media, we can have more open discussions out there. You will be able to come along, listen, ask questions, engage, get involved, have a drink, have some food. Afterwards, toter reaching into their pockets for definitely not beans on tote, because I don't think I could get that past them. But, it's not beans on toast, that means nothing. Beers on tote, because it kind of sounds like beans on toast. I thought beers on tote was possibly the greatest name for after drinks that has ever been existed ever. Don't think I'm going to get it signed off by the senior tote guys. What they do want to do is a local bar after the event, which will be going on from about 9:30 until 4:30 at Stamford Bridge. Afterwards, we can go to a local bar. Don't quote me. In fact, I'm not going to say the name, because I don't think anything's close to being confirmed about location there. But just for some after drinks. So if you see anyone speaking or you want to continue the conversation, we're going to try and focus it somewhere. And there might just be a beer or two available from the kind people, from the kind guys over at Tote. So it's looking like it's getting into quite a busy day. A busy day in a very nice space with some very, very, very prominent, experienced people. Tickets have been selling really well. So we are fairly confident this is going to end up as a sellout. And if it ends as a sellout, it's not within our domain to make it larger, because we've booked the place now and there's a finite number of people that Stamford Bridge themselves are going to allow us to have in the room. Okay, so we need a breakdown of, there's going to be obviously some people from Matchbooks, Bookie Bashing and Smart Betting Club running the event. And then we are making sure that a significant percentage of the attendees are very high profile, very high value. But we did this last year and we made it 100% of people. What we want to make sure this year is that it's open to be anyone that wants to come and listen. That's why some tickets are on sale at £99. However, there is an upper limit to the amount that are on sale, and people have been buying them. And we are going to get to a stage where no more are available, and we're not going to be able to release any more when we get to that stage. So all I'm saying is that if you're thinking about coming, you don't want to be in a position where it sells out and you've got to wait until next year, because we physically can't release any more once it's sold out. So I would be getting them earlier rather than later to avoid disappointment there. And then we should have a very good mix of kind of invitees, and I'm loving to I'm sort of looking forward to meeting the people that are buying tickets from the open market as well, to come and have a chat with those guys, get some feedback from them. You never know who you might come across there as well. And I think it's going to be a good day. I think £99 is a really decent price point. Certainly there's not going to be any profit made from SmartBash, for bookie bashing, matchbook, or from Smart Betting Club, and that was never the point. We just wanted to cover the cost and have an event where we pushed a positive narrative around betting, professional betting, advantage play, our side of the fence, rather than the narrative you hear from either the media, which is generally negative, or the bookmakers, which is generally biased. This is time for our side, for our story, and it should be a good day. I was, off the top of my head, going to tell you right now when it was, but the day slipped me by, so now I look at the screen. And incidentally, yet again, I would have edited this on the BashCast. So being live, you get to hear how dynamic this really is. Friday, the 19th of July, 2024, right at the end of the Euros, right at the beginning, just before, I think, of the school summer holidays. Couldn't be a better time of the entire year. We're going to have seminars, expert panels, food, drinks, after drinks. It's going to be a good day. It's going to sell out. If you want tickets, get over to smart-bash.com and follow the links. Is a hyphen a straighty liney thing, or is it a slashy thing? Is that a hyphen? Because if it is, don't do that. 1 second. I need to Google this. Again, just imagine I've edited this out. Google, or I could ask Alexa. Alexa, what's a hyphen?
As a noun, hyphen is usually defined as a short line used to connect the parts of a compound word or the parts of a word divided for any purpose. As
Right.
a verb,
Oh.
hyphen is usually defined as hyphenate to join by a hyphen. By the way, you have a new notification.
Okay.
To hear it.
No, thanks very much. I appreciate that. Yeah, no, it is the word I was looking for. So what's the slashy thing? Is that just a slash? And of course, the Smart Bash is a portmanteau. Did you know that? Dropped that with Pete the other day. Genuinely, I was impressed that he was impressed. That's where you take two words like Smart Betting Club and bookie bashing, and you push them together. This is yet another example of something I would edit out if it wasn't live. Coming up in the second half of the BashCast, we are going to talk about one of three topics that I haven't decided yet. It's going to be after I do the school run. I might even be wearing a different shirt. Okay, I've picked my topic. Just in case you're interested, sometimes I go into the Smart Bash and I'll say in this segment here, I'm going to talk about one of three things. And I don't know what I'm going to talk about until the time. Some background information about the BashCast. So the three segments were hole in one in the Masters, when shit goes wrong, and Bologna. How are we going to pronounce Bologna over the next 5 or 10 minutes? Let's do Bologna. That sounds good to me. And Bologna versus Udinese. And the reason for each of those was that I found the hole in one shenanigans very interesting, where we found value everywhere. And it wasn't so much the mathematics behind it. They were quite easy. And we put them all on a blog for anyone to see in a video, actually. And it wasn't so much the bookmaker palping, because maybe that was just an honest mistake or an honest error. It's a bit smelly. I'm not entirely sure about that. And they have corrected and done the right thing, so it's kind of a non-story now. Very possibly just chancing their arm and didn't get away with one. But I think the more interesting thing about that subject is the fact that it is still possible to take an opinion and for that opinion to be completely different to everybody in the market. And one of the reasons is, I think, the market often just copies each other and no one's sitting down and doing the mathematics. So if you can, and then you look at the market and the market says, well, everybody's value, it doesn't mean it's a bad bet. I was pretty convinced that this was a good bet. I'm not going to mention the fact that it won, because any bet at nearly just a shade over evens could win. That's just flipping a coin and celebrating when it comes up heads, isn't it? But all the information there is in a couple of different videos on latest news and bookie bashing. So I didn't want to rehash it. And when shit goes wrong, maybe we'll just save that for another day. But that was just around the fact that it's becoming increasingly difficult to get our hands on the odds from bookmakers recently, and I wanted to talk about why and expectations. But in all honesty, that might just be boring if you just want to hear about some gambling chats. Let's talk about some gambling chats. I wasn't going to talk about the horse racing, and I wasn't going to talk about the golf. I am going to talk about the football, and I'm deliberately going to talk about something because we're all in a better way of describing it. We're all professionals. We're all professional gamblers. We're all grown-ups here. And so let's not talk about the bet that won. Let's talk about the bet that lost, and let's talk about why and why it was great, even though it didn't win. I want to talk about Bologna versus Udinese. Now, I have rarely seen value like this, but it's exactly the reason why we built the models that we built. The value did not come around until 1 hour or even about 40 minutes before kickoff, because the API that we have with Team News has a little delay in it. I find that very frustrating. It is possible, by the way, to input teams without the confirmed lineup on bookiebashing. You can do it manually, and we do this on purpose, and you should. And someone's actually asked me, I think I've got a big edge here, but I just want to confirm it with you. And the answer is yes. You want to be the first to the markets with the correct numbers. But let's step back from Bologna versus Udinese and explain the edge. This edge is knowing the expected number of goals in a match is quite easy. You can get it from the over 2.5 price. You convert that into expected goals. And I mean, the over 2.5 price comes from expected goals. That's where it comes from. So we're just doing the reverse of that calculation. It's always quite liquid, and it's very liquid in the Champions League, Premiership. Still, this is a Serie A match. It's quite liquid. In less liquid matches, you can maybe use some different data sources, but there'll be a more wide breadth of opinion. That can present more opportunity, but less liquidity at the same time. So this is a Serie A match. We know how many goals there's going to be. We're pretty confident how many Bologna are going to get and how many Udinese are going to get. So here's our edge. It's our player XG edge. So this is where we take the goals for Bologna. Say we think they're going to get 2 goals in the game, and we distribute them amongst the 10 outfield players. We don't just give 0.2 per player. We weight it and give more to the striker than we do the defender. But we do make sure it adds up to 2.0, or at least 2.0 with some for the substitutes. Default 9.5% of goals scored by substitutes. You can change that if you want. I like that number. So now we're talking, if there's 2 goals for Bologna, once we've taken away the substitutes, we're looking at about 1.82 goals, 1.81, 1.82 goals for the outfield starting 10. And we can distribute that amongst those players. And if the AGS prices for those players suggest that there are more or less goals, well, if they suggest that there are more goals than our sum, then we can just go to the bookmakers, we can get the prices, we can bet on them. If less, which is more often than not, we can go to the exchanges and we can lay them. But there tends to be unless the markets have got it right, which rarely they have because they don't move quickly enough. So normally when they get it right, they got it right accidentally, not on purpose. Right? So that's the theory around it. And we're quite confident this is a very decent edge. The historical data shows that it is, and the logic shows that it is. We're really pricing the starting 10 players, because we don't give anything to the goalkeeper, a lot more precisely than the markets are. Why do the bookmakers not do this? Because they have enough of an edge from pricing a player up and allowing you to bet on him as if he's playing 90 minutes. And if he comes on in the 88th minute, it's a live bet. That's a huge margin for the bookmaker, and they know this. And a service that provides bookmakers with these odds was telling me just how much they love this, and they're making so much out of it they don't like to change things. You know, if I was a bookmaker, I might actually offer odds on a substitute scoring, and it would be really high. It might be 100 to 1 or something like that. And I know Paddy have got this new super sub. I haven't looked into it too much. I have heard empirically that the combination of the super sub offer at Paddy Power and the player XG model is powerful and profitable. But I don't want to give away too many edges, so go and have a look at it yourself if you think that you might be interested in that. So now we come to Bologna versus Udinese, and we're expecting because it's a Serie A match between two teams that have had their fair share of 0-0s recently. 2.45 goals in this match. 1.73 going to the Bolognese and 0.72 going to Udinese. Right, so those are nearly they're not arguable facts. That's objective, not subjective information that we're getting from the market. So we've got 1.73 goals to distribute amongst all of our players in Bologna. However, when you look at the markets think there's going to be much less. There are going to be fewer goals for Bologna, because if you take the price of AGS and add them all up for those starting 10, you end up with like 1.2. So that presents unbelievable opportunity, not just at the bookmaker and at the exchange, because the exchange tends to follow the bookmaker price, especially in games like Serie A, where there are less professional syndicates in play. In fact, who are the professional syndicates in play in a match like Bologna versus Udinese? It's possibly people with a model similar to or exactly the same as the bookie bashing player XG model. Why is it different is the question. Well, if you look at Bologna's previous games, they had a 0-0 versus Frosinone. They had a 0-0 versus Monza. But they had a 3-1 unexpectedly when they were outsiders against Roma, away at Roma. No one saw that coming. Roma were the big favourite team in that game. And that lineup was Ndoye, Zerki, and Silly Makers, right? And who's starting against Udinese? Ndoye, Zerki, and Silly Makers. So it's almost like they've got the same three with an attacking formation. And when you looked at when they were playing Frosinone, there was none of those three started. Zerki did, but I mean we were missing Ndoye. When you look at against Monza, two of the three were missing. So I think it was like that formation was unexpected. Ndoye wasn't expected to play, and as a result, all of a sudden, the markets were overpriced for all of the Bologna players. Now, we don't get this unless we are monitoring the market en masse and summing up the number of goals the market thinks that each of the starting 10 is going to get after team news. It's quite a lot to process for quite a lot of games, but we saw this for Bologna versus Udinese, and at this point, we saw mega value everywhere. How much mega value? Well, for starters, the main striker, Zerki, was just value everywhere, but I like exchange bets, and he was 2.74 on the exchange when even money, 2.00, coin flip to score. 2 plus goals, 12.5 on the exchange, 6.6 fair. 3 plus goals, 80 on the exchange, 23 fair. First goal, 5 on the exchange, and every bookmaker, loads of bookmakers, 4.5, 4.6, 5.0. He was in the 3s, 3.9, 3.8 to get the first goal in that game. Ndoye to score any time during the match, 6.4 to back 5.2. Would have been his fair odds given the XG for, I mean, just everywhere, 6.4 looks like a big price for a striker in a game which is expecting 2.4 goals, 1.7 of them going to Bologna against a team where they're the favourites against Udinese. Everything suggested that those were great bets for Zerki. Everything for him to do, for him to score any time. The first half, 2 plus, 3 plus. If he can get 4 plus, first goal, last goal. Everything was plus EV for Zerki, as it was for Ndoye, as it was for Salimarcus, as it was for like everybody in the team. The goalkeeper was probably value in that game. This is the game that their player XG model was written for. It's free 200% EV for every single player in every market. It's great. Go to the shops, bet on it. Go to the exchanges. Okay, there's not a lot on the exchanges. Take it. Go to a shop bookmaker. Take that. Go to a soft bookmaker. Take that. It's just raining value. So what happens in the game? Bologna get a red card with Bukema, who tripped somebody in the 55th minute and in the 64th minute. And that changed the course of the game. but they hadn't scored up until that point anyway, and it finished 1-1 with 1 goal for silly makers. So one of the 3 strikers did get it, and if I can just bring up my archive from yesterday, having a look at the value on silly makers, he wasn't the first goal scorer, so I'm just going to ignore that. But he was 7.5 at the bookmakers, 13-2, as a striker for a team when he was expected to get 0.19 goals in this game. Pretty much every bookmaker was value for him to score 5.6 fairs. That would have been the only bet that came in. Zerky didn't come in. Ndoye, who we were waiting for and may have been the reason for the value in this game, didn't come in. 2+ didn't come in. 3+ didn't come in. First goal scorer didn't come in because it was the Udinese player, Piero, who got it. So we uncovered all of this value and I won the square root of bugger all. If anybody was on big silly makers, unlike me, then they may have made some money. But yeah, so what does that mean? Well, all we want is the opportunity. I'd take that game 100 times out of 100. The next time they're not going to get a red card, or they are going to get a goal in the first half. You know, it's not about the outcome. It's about beating the markets. And in this one, we tangibly and could prove it through logic, had the exchanges and the bookmakers and everyone beaten it. They were overpriced and they got away with one. They were lucky. They were laying 6-4 in Zerky. They shouldn't have been. They should have been laying an odds-on price. They were laying 2+ and 3+ and first goal scorer way too high, and they shouldn't have been. But unfortunately, and it happens, just because you've found value everywhere, it doesn't mean that those value bets are going to win. Good bets, good value bets will lose, and bad value bets will win. All we do is we look for the opportunity time and time again, and over a large data sample size, we will be making some money. That's Udinese versus Bologna off of yesterday. So sports betting isn't for everybody. Most people that have been doing this for long enough know that they shouldn't ever really bring up the fact that they win at sports betting at an event, a social occasion, because the recipient of that news will typically never react positively. Either they roll their eyes because it's not something that's possible, they can't get their head around that the bookmakers can be beaten. I mean, my father-in-law worked for a bookmaker for 20 years, and still when he heard what I did, his initial reaction was, well, the bookmaker always wins, and that's fine. A lot of people have that opinion. It's not my job to change it. Or even worse, they know somebody that's got a system, their cousin has got a system, and you're like, oh, I don't even want to, I wish I'd never said anything. And so now, for most of the time, I don't. And we all know that sports betting isn't for everyone. It's really for people that have an understanding of variance, volatility, bankroll management. Without that, there is the risk that if you go on a losing run, you don't understand why. And if you go on a winning run, you have a false expectation. So both things sit true. So I do want to sort of, I don't know, hamper home the fact that sports betting is not for everyone. We had a message through recently, and we take all messages seriously and look into them, but the message subject was the person, the sender, had significant concerns about the accuracy of our models. Now, I want to break down that statement, if that's okay, because perhaps we should, when someone comes to us with this, not just me, I'm talking the global we, the initial reaction can be to be very defensive, but also always if someone's coming to you with any information on the poker table or not, and you have nothing else, the least you should do is listen and have a look at it. And we always do. Now, the statement itself is a little bit of a red flag, because in the world of prediction, you can have good models and you can have bad models. But there's no right or wrong. What's the probability of Manchester United winning tomorrow? Is the right price evens? Is the right price 2-1? There is no right price. Okay, there's a good price and a bad price. There are models that can be improved. There are advantages and disadvantages. But there's no right and wrong. Okay, anybody could argue to me that Manchester United should be 2-1 when they're liquid evens on the exchange, and perhaps that opinion is valid. Well, all opinions are valid, but how much substance is behind that, and can I counter-argue that the liquid exchange might be more of that? Not until I hear what their argument is. Okay? And secondly, in the world of prediction, this is all this game is. We're trying to predict, and then we're trying to find value around our prediction models. These are mathematical models that take data in, process them, and export data. So in the world of sports betting, what we make sure is that these models work over large enough sample sizes. And sometimes I beat my head against a wall when I know almost immediately that the answer is going to be sample size, because some people don't want to hear that the answer is sample size. And sometimes the answer is not sample size, but that's only if you can't prove historically that your model or your data is working or not. So when you sign up to bookie bashing, we have a thing that you have to go through. Who are we not for? If you do not have a basic understanding of variance, risk and bankroll management, we would rather you did not sign up. Go and learn about it. Okay, please. If you are going to bet with money you cannot afford to lose, we do not want you to sign up. This is for sure. This is any investment money throughout whatever it is, whether it's cryptocurrencies, whether it's stock trading, whether it's penny shares, whether it's pyramid schemes, it should only be money you can afford to lose ever. If you're looking for a guaranteed income to feed yourself or your family, we do not want you to sign up. I think that should be self-explanatory. And if you think that a losing run experience will result in you shouting at us on forums, social media or email, then we would rather you did not sign up. So you have to go through that and read it. Of course, if people are signing up to something, how often do they read everything? They just want to click, 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 get through to the pot of gold at the end of this stupid process. How dare I be delayed? I've got an important man. I've got things to do. I've got beers to drink. So that's what you have to go through. So this message came in. Actually, it's come in from 3 different people. I mean, the subject line was only from one person, but 3 different people got in touch. And it was variously around golf, football and horse racing. So let's talk about each of the 3 of those. So the first person had been losing on golf this year. And they wanted to know what they were doing wrong. May I say they were very polite about it. And my first initial answer is, well, I am losing on golf as well this year. Okay. Actually, I'm only marginally losing. I think I'm about -2%. I've had a couple of winners, and then break even all the way from there. And that's both each way betting, and outright on the exchange as well. So that's the first thing. Tracking on the site is -9.75% as of today, the 1st of May. -9.75% ROI for 2024. However, may I say, there was one tournament where we couldn't put it up on bookie bashing because we had some technological problems that afternoon with scrapers, and all of our attention was on that. And because all of our attention was on that, we didn't look at the fact that we hadn't put the options on the site. Now, it doesn't really matter if we miss one of the options on the site, although I have to say it's one of the only times that we had done that. And you would guess it, we sent that off in weekly golf value and we got the winner in that event. So that changes everything. I think we would be in profit with that win. Full results are here. And there's a slight difference between weekly golf value. With one tournament of the entire year that we missed on weekly golf value, we didn't have in bookie bashing. Yeah, there's like a, well, not quite on profit on weekly golf value, but there's like a -3% instead of -10%. So there you go. So why has that happened? Well, early on in the year, quite a significant number of crazy outsiders won. You had 200 to 1, 300 to 1, 400 to 1, 500 to 1. You had Nick Dunlap, things like that. And sometimes, just sometimes, I mean, those guys will be value, but there's quite a lot of those guys, and quite often in a betting strategy, you might miss one. In fact, you're going to miss one. Okay, so just keep at it. Keep placing your plus EV bets, and you'll hit the Nick Dunlaps at 500 to 1 sooner or later. And it doesn't take that many 500 to 1s to make betting at 500 to 1 profitable. But then after the big long shots won, then Scotty Scheffler decided to wake up with a first, second, first. In 5 tournaments, he won 4 of them. And McIlroy Lowry took the Zurich last week. And generally, when favourites, very short price favourites win, we're not going to find a lot of value on them. As a rough rule of thumb, there's something called the McIlroy effect, and that is that lots of recreational punters will walk into your William Hill, to your Betfred, and just blindly bet on McIlroy at any price that they offer. And he's by far the most popular recreational golfer for recreational bettors to bet on. So why would the bookmaker offer a good price? They'd be idiots to do so. They can maximise the profits by offering a bad price on McIlroy and a good price to other golfers, because they still balance the book to the same overround. So this is the McIlroy effect. When they're very high profile, big recreational popular names, the price is going to be bad. It's the same with Scotty Scheffler. And so Scotty's been winning and McIlroy's been winning, and that's very difficult to get those guys. So we've only been hitting the places. 35 tournaments, only 2 winners. You know, historically, we're looking at about a winner every 8 events, and yet we've only had 2 from 35. We should have 4 by now. We did miss one and we're maybe down 1, but that's okay, because 35 events is nothing, and this is the critical point of it all. 35 golf tournaments is nothing, right? We've got to be on a lot more. And the respondent was, well, I've been betting 20 to 30 players per tournament, so that's nearly 1,000 bets. Doesn't matter. It's not the 1,000 bets that's important, it's the 35 tournaments that's important here. Okay? So, give it time. Golf betting is so slow. You can go a whole year and still be down, although we haven't yet. Not calendar year. Anyway, I think there is a month-to-month that we have done. Last year, if you looked at our chart last year, and we had the same sort of issue last year, with a £1,000 bankroll, at between January and May, we were 900 down. We nearly bust the entire thing. But we ended up 3,000 up. I mean, we were still actually slightly negative in August. It was a very late of the year charge, but that's just the way it works. So this year, on a £1,000 bankroll, we've hit a low of 590, and now we're currently at a low of 320, but that's with having missed one of the golfers. I mean, if we'd hit him, we might be at like minus 10, 20 quid, something like that, on a £1,000 bankroll. So be patient. I hate to say it. I know 4 months of doing it, if you've never done it before, you would expect profits by now, but honestly, there's going to be lots of times where we go 4 months without making any money. Just wait until the period of time comes when we do. In football, the concerns had been around results since February. And again, I've placed 1,500 bets and I have a negative return on investment. But when you looked at the 1,500 bets, they were maybe 2 from the same market and then another market in the same game. And when you looked at it, there were only actually 270 individual games. And when you're looking at your data, that's what you can look at, especially when you're betting on things to happen. Win both halves, match odds and over 2.5, over this, over that, and then it finishes 0-0. If you've got like 11 bets in that game, they're all going to lose. So be aware of that when you're plotting your variance chart. I mean, the thing that this guy had done, he'd done it correctly, was he'd gone over to the variance simulation and he plugged his numbers in, and he was like, well, I'm at the bottom percent. But that was only if all of those bets were independent, and they weren't. They were in the same markets. So look at your unique games with average odds and average EV when you plug it into the variance calculator, okay? And then the last one was horse racing. And this was the one that we found most frustrating, because the person said they had had nothing but losses. Now, we have so much data and information to say that the long-term return on investment is 5%, but more so than question the models, which the person was, they then went on to say that they had been fooled into signing up and they wish they hadn't because they were reliant on the profits for food. Drama sound in the background. Dun, dun, dun. Come on. What do you do with that? And they requested a full refund of their bookie bashing subscription. Now, before I give anyone any ideas, that's an unacceptable request. It's an unacceptable request to sign up, try out for a period of time, and then reply, I've had nothing but losses and I need the money back because I need to eat. That's free rolling us, right? So you get to try us out, and if you win, you keep the money, other than the subscription cost, which, by the way, pays for the scrapers and the staff and everything for you to have the data. It's a little bit like going to a restaurant. Going to a restaurant, trying the meal, get to the end of the meal, going, didn't like the meal, so I'm not going to pay. Would you ever do that? So I think that's equivalent. And it sets a bad precedent. So I can't really go through exactly what we did, but we reached out to help the person because we don't want the person not to be able to eat. But it's not as simple as, well, here's all your money back, because it ain't happening like that. So betting, sports betting, isn't for everyone. And if you think you know someone that could do with a little bit of extra pocket money in their pocket and a little bit of fun, and they have no idea about the concepts of bankroll management, risk and variance, don't point them in the direction of bookie bashing and don't encourage them to do it. It isn't for everyone. You do it because you understand these things. You take some enjoyment out of them and you have a conceptual understanding of the basic foundations behind which investment profiles are built. That puts you in the probably top 25% of people that understand investment strategies, and like the top 5% of people that could get their head around the concept that sports betting can be profitable in the population. Don't just think that the 95% of the population can do this, because they can't. And I pretty much am sure that the 3 respondents that I got that had significant concerns about the accuracy of my models or our models fall into that 95% of people that simply don't have a grasp of those fundamental principles. Affordability checks, of which I have been, can I call myself a victim? Yeah, let's call myself a victim. I've been a victim of recently, are reported to be changing their trigger levels to much higher amounts of £5,000 a month and £25,000 a year, with lower limits for 18 to 24-year-olds. These are, although anti-laundering money checks are triggered at much lower levels. So, with a lot to be concerned about, there is the understanding that we do need to... It's kind of offensive to be accused or suspected of being in money laundering, and the reason is because none of us are. But you've got to understand that if you've got £10,000 from your cocaine selling business and you can't explain where that's come from, then a way of making it clean, washing it, is to take it to the bookmakers and bet on 100 bets at £100 each, and then all of a sudden your net win and loss that money can be explained. You can deposit that and you can show where that money has come from, and washing that through once successfully explains where all the profits from your massive cocaine business has come from. So I understand that it's necessary, and we all want to keep crime down. Money laundering actually affects us all and society all as a whole, so it's a good thing to keep an eye on. It's an annoying thing to be caught up in, because who's cycling around with loads of cash other than criminals and professional gamblers? And gamblers get a bit of short thrift in this. I mean, you keep on seeing, on ITV that somebody's got £10,000 down at Royal Ascot on a horse at 50 to 1. Whereas if we try and deposit £50 online and then withdraw 100, we're going to be asked for however many documents in the name of money laundering, and that's not money laundering. And sometimes they do that for verification purposes, but the bookmakers themselves have muddied the waters by using it to their advantage of weeding out winning players. None more so through this really dangerous and Orwellian direction that we're moving into with open banking, where Bet365 can ask me to log on to my bank account through a third party, and then that third party looks at everything that I've spent on burgers and chocolates and cigarettes and cocaine and mortgage and electricity and gas and gambling. And then at the back end, I've actually seen a little page. It shows Bet365 a pie chart of where I spend my money, and it's not just on gambling. They'll tell Bet365 how much I spend on flowers for my wife and so on and so forth. So what's the net? Where's the end game there? Do they turn around and say, you earn £1,000 a month, you bet £50 a month, that's not enough? What if I have £1 million in the bank? I saw this question be asked, and somebody answered, well, maybe £40,000. Right? Where's £40,000 come from? Why can't I bet £60,000 if I've got £1 million in the bank? I'll telling you this now, if I won the lottery and I had £1 million, I would be miffed and a half if somebody told me that they decided that 40,000 was my upper limit of what I could bet out of that £1 million. What am I going to do with the other? What, buy a sports car? I personally think that's disgusting. £100,000 sports car. Really do. So where do we go with this? The frictionless checks, whether they're frictionless or not, go and listen to Andrew Rhodes over the SBC podcast and see if you think that the man in charge of the Gambling Commission even understands the threat that they are. But these enhanced checks, at least they're up from what they were before. Because before, they were very concerning. Doesn't mean that it's definitely going to happen, but what we are doing is we're moving in the direction of common sense. And deep down inside, I think I always thought that we might just go in that direction. So whilst we're traveling in the direction of common sense, what's happening over in the United States of America, the home of common sense, I think we can all agree. This is an example of the BashCast where I thought there was going to be a link up right in front of me. And then I think I've closed it down. So this isn't getting edited out. That would have been quite nice to have moved into that, because I enjoyed the line, the United States is the home of common sense. The Jacksonville Jaguars are asking FanDuel for $22 million back. That's right, $22 million. Why would the Jacksonville Jaguars, off of the NFL, be asking FanDuel for $22 million? Well, it turns out that the Jaguars finance manager, Amit Patel, some lovely chap in his 30s, was handed what is known as a virtual credit card. A virtual credit card is like a credit card, but it's just the number. You don't physically get a bit of plastic, right? And so you could, if anyone with access to the company's virtual credit card pretty much just needs to know the number and the three numbers at the back. And as part of his role as the financial planning and analysis coordinator at the Jacksonville Jaguars, where he was overseeing the internal financial system as well as budgets and monetary statements. He also thought that he would deposit $20 million into FanDuel and bet there. His name was Parlay Picker, which is like Aka Picker or Multiples Picker or Combo Bets Picker or something like that. And he decided he was going to enter, as you do in America, because sports betting is more in its infancy, fantasy tournaments. He lost $1 million in DraftKings. He was doing... Now, I consider... Okay? I've made a fair whack gambling. I consider $200, $500 poker tournament these days, or a fantasy draft lineup to be high stakes for me, and that's fine. I know they go higher. The higher you go, the sharper you go, but you've also got to remember that American is a different economy than over here. deputy manager at Walmart, which is equivalent to your assistant manager down at Morrison's, is going to be on $150,000 or £130,000 a year. I'm telling you this, the assistant manager down at Stoke Heath Morrison's isn't on £130,000 a year. If he is, then I apologise. But he isn't. So, yeah, these massive buy-ins are either sharps or for people out there that simply have a little bit more disposable money than me because they might earn more, inheritance or whatever. He was entering buy-ins of $24,000. $24,000. I don't care how rich you are. If you're a millionaire, if you've got $1 million bankroll, a $24,000 tournament is probably a little bit high for that bankroll. It's unbelievable. Anyway, it wasn't his money. He was actually depositing money for the Jacksonville Jaguars. And he went to court and his defense team provided an argument that, like, well, yeah, he did this, but he has a serious gambling addiction and therefore the court should take pity. Now, I'm not going to get into what I think of that as a defense, but it's a little bit like, no, do you know what? I'm not going to go down that line. I'll get myself cancelled a little bit faster than I could be. So, what's amazing about this is the fact that he was able to do it. He was, not just because, $20 million, even for America, is a lot of money. But actually, as it transpired, Parlay Picker, when you plot the graph of winners and losers, Parlay Picker was the biggest loser ever on FanDuel, right? And that came from a guy that I don't know how much the Jacksonville Jaguars were paying him. Presumably quite a lot. I wouldn't be surprised if it was $500,000 a year. But he's deposited $20 million. It's like 40 times your career's worth of salary. On top of the deposits into FanDuel, he purchased 2 vehicles, a condominium, a designer watch worth more than $95,000 cryptocurrency and more. I think the big first red flag for me as the head honcho at the Jacksonville Jaguars would be that my financial planning and analysis coordinator was wearing a $95,000 watch, or would even want to wear a $95,000 watch. There's not a lot of budgeting with that. So that's the Jags. And the thing that's amazing about the Jags is for every single one of the Amit Patels, how many more were there that weren't found out because they didn't happen to work for the Jacksonville Jaguars? Unless it happens to pretty household names or famous people, there's no reason that it's a public news story and we don't hear about it. So it hasn't happened anywhere else other than him, has he? In baseball, Shohei Ohtani is one of the most famous baseball players in the entire world. He plays for the Los Angeles Dodgers, having previously played for the Los Angeles Angels and the Hokkaido Nippoham Fighters of the Nippon Professional Baseball League. And he is a two-way player, meaning he does the throwy thing and the batty thing, both in rounders. Don't come at me saying that I don't know about my baseball. I know everything about baseball, mate. So he's the Lionel Messi. This guy is the GOAT of baseball. Literally, he's won the MVP this season and last season. And if you're a baseball fan in America, you know who Shohei Ohtani is. Now, he's Japanese, no surprise. Doesn't speak any English, and so his interpreter is his pal, his best mate, Ippei Mitsuhara. And Ippei Mitsuhara has got himself into a little bit of hot water because he has pretended to be his client, Shohei Ohtani, to the bookmakers and has stolen $40 million. Because when Shohei Ohtani came to America, Ippei Mitsuhara, who was his interpreter, his manager, his mate, and everything like that, he set up his client some bank accounts, but accidentally held on to the logon details and so was able to do this to embezzle into some bookmakers in America. And there has been a furor about this in America, but he was betting at illegal bookmakers. He was getting credit, but pretending to be Ohtani, the famous baseball player, and then he was losing, and then he would get more credit, and then every now and again he would pay it off. But these were illegal bookmakers he was doing this at. So it is the IWS. It's the federal government in America, the tax people, who are suing. Well, not just suing, who have filed a complaint and are going to send this interpreter, Ipai, to jail. Now, you can get your hands on the actual complaint that's going into court about this. And one of the most amazing things about this complaint is that they have the conversations that Ipai had with the bookmakers. Now, the bookmakers in these conversations thought they were talking to the baseball player, whereas in fact they were talking to the interpreter. But if we want to talk in the UK about financial checks that we're going to have an enhanced tier if a punter loses £1,000 in 24 hours and £2,000 within 90 days, which has now been changed to maybe £5,000 a month and £25,000 a year. Bear those numbers in mind, that those are going to have enhanced checks in the UK when you listened to what was going on here. So I'm going to read you some of these conversations that happened over a series of days between the interpreter and the bookmaker, bearing in mind the bookmaker believes that they're talking to the baseball player. Okay, so Mitsuhara is asking for a bump here. Now, a bump is where you get a line of credit. And he asks for a bump, and he says, can you put in 100k? This is in March the 10th, 2022. 100k instead of 300k. To which the bookmaker responded, you mean lower the credit to 100k? And Mitsuhara confirmed, yeah, I'll go reckless with 300k. A few days later, Mitsuhara then stated, I just sent you 500 just now. Well, $500 isn't going to cover very much. That will be $500,000, ladies and gentlemen. I tried 1,000, which will be a milli, but it won't let me for some reason. So I will send another 500,000 tomorrow or the day after, just like 500,000 here or there. You know, on June the 20th, 2023, Mitsuhara messaged, it looks like I can only send you 500,000 per week. I put in a wire for 500,000 earlier today. It should be in your account by tomorrow. Does 500,000 per week work for you? That's $500,000 per week. He went on that he kept on. This is quite an interesting conversation between the bookmaker and Mitsuhara, because although he was sending 500,000 a week, he went on what he described to be a bad run, and in a very short period of time owed the bookmaker another $1 million. The bookmaker just kept on increasing Mitsuhara's betting limits. They kind of knew that he was a massive fish, but a whale. He actually messaged them saying, I'm terrible at the sports betting thing. LOL. Any chance you can bump me again? As you know, you don't have to worry about me not paying! ! Because they think he's the baseball player. And on May the 20th, 23, Bookmaker 1 messaged Mitsuhara saying, I know you've been on a bad run. I don't mind bumping you. I just want to verify that you can send me at least $2 million on June the 1st. And on June the 22nd, Mitsuhara messaged back, I got my ass kicked again, LOL. Any chance I can get one last bump? This will be my last one for a while if I lose it. Bookmaker 1 responded the same day, okay, bud, I just want to be able to communicate with my partner so he knows expectations. If I can assure him that minimum 500 will be sent every week, I can do the bump to whatever you want. It's just imperative that the 500,000 is sent every week. As you can imagine, the figures are very high, and I just don't want to not be able to deliver what I tell him. FYI, I have already paid out of my pocket to him half the balance that is on this account, so whatever is lost every week, I have to give him half of the balance, which is why I'm asking these direct, important questions. On June 23rd, 2023, Mitsuhara messaged him saying, I'm the worst, LOL, can't catch a break. Can I get one last bump? I swear this is going to be my last until I get the balance down significantly. I promise this will be my last bump for a while. I mean, there's absolutely no red flags that anything's going wrong here, is there? On June the 24th, which is the next day, Mitsuhara then said, I have a problem, LOL. Can I get one last bump? This one is for real. Last one for real. I mean, just reading that is extraordinary. And Bookmaker 1 responded on the same day, simply saying, well, what do you think the Bookmaker said? They said, done, tick. I have the same problem. To be honest with you, as long as you can guarantee the 500,000 every Monday, I'll give you as much as you want because I know you're good for it. Again, I just have to clean it with my partner, and that's one of the reasons why I was asking before. On November 17th last year, the bookmaker said, hey, it's 2 o'clock on Friday. I don't know why you're not returning my calls. I'm here in Newport. I'm just going to go and see if I can get in touch with you, somebody else, since you're not responding. Please call me back immediately. And Mitsuhara then spent a couple of days before he said, if I'm going to be honest, I ended up losing a lot of money on crypto in the last couple of years, and I took a huge hit with sports too. So I just wanted to ask, is there any way we can settle on an amount? I've lost way too much on this site already, and I know it's my fault. So he's turned around and said he's lost so much, he actually doesn't want to pay it all. He just wants to settle on an amount he can pay. Kind of free-rolling the bookmaker. And the bookmaker messaged back, look, I know you're busy, but you need to show some respect. I put my neck out here. Call me by tonight. I don't care how late it is or what time it is. Mitsuhara responded saying, I'm sorry, bro. I really don't mean to disrespect you at all. I promise it's just been super busy. I've got other issues going on as well. Everything has just been really tough recently. I don't think you ever gave me the new bank account info. Could I get that, please, to try to send something tomorrow? And then at the beginning of this year, the bookmaker said, look, you're putting me in a position where this is getting out of control. If I don't hear from you by the end of today, it's going to be out of my hands. I don't know what the acronym I said earlier was, because I was doing it off the top of my head. Again, a point where I would pause the BashCast. It's the IRS in America, isn't it? So they had a look at the betting records. He had approximately 19,000 wagers between December 2021 and January 24. That's nearly 25 bets per day on average. The wagers reflected in the 35,966 records ranged in value from $10 to $160,000 per bet, with an average amount of roughly $12,800. During this period, the total winning bets were 142 million and the total losing bets were 182 million, leaving a total net balance of negative $40,678,436.94. All done from someone whose job was an interpreter betting on someone else's name. So whether they do frictionless checks at £1,000 in 24 hours or £5,000 per month, there seems to be two completely different universes existing at the same time, separated just by a small little ocean with a couple of dolphins in it. Whatever you're doing this weekend, do try not to lose $40,678,436.94. This is Tom, signing out.